I'm Tom Landon. I have been paddling almost my whole life, and I just love the Roanoke River. The outdoors is really important to me. When, again, life is stressful, but if you can get on a bike or get in a boat, take a long walk, it's just great for your mental health and physical as well. When I was a little kid, I had a neighbor who loved to paddle, and he had children of his own, and I think when he wanted to paddle on Saturdays, his wife said, you can paddle, but you got to take at least one kid with you. So I started paddling at a very young age with Mr. Perry, who just passed away, sadly. And ever since then, paddling's always been something I've done. I'm not a competitive, flip upside down, whitewater guy, really. But one of the first major purchases my wife and I made when we got together was to buy a used canoe. And now we've got sit-on-top kayaks. And it's really common for us on a Wednesday afternoon, to send out a text message to 5 or 6 friends saying, anybody want to float tonight? We'll put in out at Salem Rotary Park at 5 o'clock and float down to Wasena, a nice 2-hour float. It's just a great way to kind of chill yourself out, and there's no telephone, there's no distractions. You're riding essentially on the water, inches above the water. You really get to see things from a different perspective that I think it's really hard to appreciate any other way. I grew up in Indiana, but I came here in 1985 just in time for the big flood, and have been here ever since. Yeah, I was actually working at Channel 7 when the flood of '85 hit, and I was one of the few people who could get to work. So during that time, I saw it from the inside of a studio, worked 48 hours straight as we tried to get the word out to people what was going on in the community. I think we all, those of us who were here, will never forget, Delegate Vic Thomas and his family being airlifted off of their building over their convenience store over near Dale Avenue. I remember the old Moore's lumber yard that was down where the Carillion, Ukrops, mellow mushroom area was, and I remember just the whole lumber yard floating away, and seeing that from 581. It was, that's really burned into my brain. The effects of the flood were long-lasting. Obviously, the whole cleaning up of the area where the Greenway is down by Carillion and all the way through from Wasena, sort of the first baby steps toward the rest of the Greenway that we have now. I really think that flood focused Roanokers on the river in a way that they had not been focused on it before. Well, I remember when, after the flood, the Army Corps of Engineers got serious about helping with flood reduction, and their first idea, as I recall, was to just dredge the river, build up levees, and get it through town, move the water through town. And thankfully, it took so long, and because of the endangered species and things they encountered, we ended up with what we have now, which is such a great system of giving the river a place to go without changing the character of the river. And I see what happened in other cities that did their flood reduction plans before Roanoke did, and at the time I wished it had happened sooner, but I'm really glad it took the time it did. And people see the river as a resource by having the bike path along the river, by people walking and playing in the playgrounds that are along the river. I don't think the river was in people's thoughts prior to the flood of '85 in the way that it is now, and I think people see it as a resource. I wish it were cleaner, but it's still an amazing resource, and we've got a ways to go to make it what it could be, I think. I think what we have is special to our kind of immediate area. I think cities all over are figuring out that these rivers that used to be considered just a sewer, just a place to put your industrial waste, actually can play a role in economic development and the health of your community. So I think Roanoke is on the right track with it. I would never say that it's where it needs to be. We need more put in and takeouts. They're not always in the best place. There are some good ones, but some people only want to float an hour. Some people want to float for 4 hours. So keeping that in mind as they continue to develop the resources around the river. I love what's going on down near Explore. The fact that they're running tubing out of there, and that's such nice flat water. Paddling Carvin's Cove is great if you in a summer evening when it's hot to go out and sit in your boat. You can't get in the water, but you can at least sit in your boat and feel the cool coming up through the bottom of it. I think the river is cleaner than it used to be. But if you paddle the upper Roanoke and you up above Salem and you come into, you paddle that North Fork and you see just how pristine it is where there's no development. And then you start getting into where there are houses and factories, and you start seeing plastic bags, and you see cigarette butts, and you see mattresses and dumpsters, and there's a lot of stuff in our river still that needs to go away. And a one-day river cleanup is great, but I really think it's going to require a commitment to regular cleanup after every storm. I think they've done a good job of moving dumpsters and things away from the river in the upper part of the Roanoke, so that when it does flood, the contents of the dumpster don't end up in the river. But you still see a lot of stuff, plastic bags especially. People, please put your plastic bags away. Well, hopefully we're all just moving in a more conservation-minded direction all the time anyway, whether we use the river or not for floating. But I look behind me and see kids playing on a playground. That means people are down here. They're seeing what's on, they're hopefully getting an appreciation for the stream. I know in like Fishburne Park, they bring school groups down there to do water quality testing, and you see the kids out there in their tennis shoes wading through the creek. I think the schools are trying to do what they can. But in the end, it's a matter of, not flicking your cigarette out the window or throwing your bag of trash out. And it mystifies me when I see that. And then the other thing is just sort of unintentional litter that happens all the time. And I think that's what most of the bags we see are. People don't mean to throw out their bags. They just don't close their trash can lid all the way. Or, it blows away in the parking lot of the grocery store or whatever. We just need to be more conscious of the fact that whatever is on the ground is going to end up in the river. I love all the rivers around here. My favorite float is up on the new below Parisburg, actually. And I know that's not the Roanoke River, but it's such a gorgeous float up there. But in the springtime, when the river's up and you can float from up above Elliston down on the Roanoke, it's where it's undeveloped and completely pristine, is probably my favorite stretch. But again, on a regular basis, the middle of the week float to Wasena is just a great float. It's got a little bit of everything. It's a little fast. It's a little slow. There's time to talk. I just consider it something that more people should know about and more people should experience. If you like to float and you haven't floated the Roanoke, you should give it a shot. It's a great beginner river. There are outfitters that can get you going here. To see the river from below the banks with the turtles and the heron, and occasionally, if you're lucky, maybe you'll see an eagle or an osprey. It's just going to put you in a good mood.